is our first podcast. Maggie and I are super excited about it. If you just stumbled upon this, hello, I'm Stefanie, co-owner of Oh You're Lovely. And with me is the other co-owner of Oh You're Lovely, the lovely Maggie.
Hi.
So, you guys, we have no idea what we're doing. We have no idea how this is all going to kind of evolve. Today, what we think we're going to do, though, or we know we're going to do, is just give a little brief history of ourselves, how Oh You're Lovely became, and maybe a few of the dreams and hopes we have for this podcast, so to speak. So it's a ton of fun for us to, because Maggie usually is not, you don't get to see her face. So if you're watching the recording, you get to see her face. And also you don't really get to hear her voice necessarily because she's not on the lives with me. So this is a ton of fun. I know it's a little bit out of her comfort. So I appreciate us doing this. I'm so excited. So I am going to hand it off to you, Maggie, for a little bit. You can talk a little bit about your background and all that jazz. So on to you.
Okay. Hi. So I don't know how far back in my background I should go. I'll probably just talk about like relevant stuff. So in my early 20s, I learned how to crochet and knit, and one thing led to another, and I became a fiber artist, and I sold at farmers markets and festivals and galleries, and I did that for a really long time. I did that, I think, for about 10 years. And then I got carpal tunnel really bad and just had to stop. But I was so in love with yarn and fiber at the time. I found a job working at a yarn company, and I was the vice president of a yarn company for 3 years. And then decided it was time for another change. And I did a couple little odd jobs and just kind of was a mom and just floated around for a little while trying to decide what I wanted to do. And in that, somewhere in there, Stefanie and I reconnected, which we went all through school together, from itsy bitsy through high school. We weren't necessarily like in the same circles and stuff, but we went to a very, very small school. I think there was 100 kids in our graduating class.
Less than 100.
So everybody knew everybody. So it's somewhere in, when I was still doing fiber arts, we reconnected on Facebook, and she was also crafty, and we would comment on each other's stuff. And then Stefanie started doing these crafting lives, and my daughter and I would watch them. And one day she was working with these wood flowers, and I was like, what the heck are those? So I started messaging her, and then I was ordering them and started working with them also, and fell in love with the product. Yeah. And then we can talk more about how our business story, got built. But that's kind of my professional history. I've been in the handmade small business world really my entire adult life. And it's just completely part of who I am.
I love it.
So, Steph, why don't you talk about your history?
Okay, so I've always been kind of creative, so to speak, and done weird crafts and things like that all through middle school and high school. It wasn't though until my oldest daughter, who's going to be turning 16 in May, Layla, which she's been on a lot of the, well, not a lot, but she's been on some of the lives and the YouTube videos. So it was when I was pregnant with her, I had a hormonal breakdown because I could not find a quilt that had a panda bear on it. And pandas were really important to my husband and I at the time that we were pregnant with Layla. And I couldn't find one, and I had this breakdown. I called him on the phone. He was like out with friends, and I'm just like sobbing. And he's like, "What is the problem?" And I'm like, "I can't find a quilt with a panda bear." And I had found a pattern for a quilt that had a panda bear, and so he bought me a sewing machine for Valentine's Day that year. Now I tried to make the quilt. It turned out horrible, and I hired someone. So I did get my panda bear quilt, but I'm terrible at quilting still to this day. However, the sewing machine was the catalyst for everything that came after that. So I started sewing nonstop. I was making all kinds of bags and clothes for Layla, things like that. And I had so much stuff that I was like, what am I going to do with all these things? So I went back to our hometown and I reached out to a small store that we both know the owner of. She's no longer at that place, but
Mm-hmm.
she has a really cool art center now. And I reached,
We love you, Kim.
we love you, Kim. Oh, she's amazing. Um, and I reached out to her. I went to her shop and I was like, would you be interested in maybe consigning these? And now I learned that's not what you're supposed to do. Like, you're not supposed to just pop up and ask somebody to consign things with you. But anyway, she said yes. And it was the first like little bit of confidence of like, oh my gosh, I could actually do this. So I started craft, like doing all the craft shows, doing a ton of them in my area, which we should point out that I'm in Wisconsin, Maggie's in North Carolina. So I was doing some of the craft shows in that area and really enjoyed it, which then turned into me collecting. I'm a collector. So I collected a ton of vintage, I know, shocking, ton of vintage dress patterns, but I never made the patterns. I just loved the envelopes so much. So then I started making artwork with those and with the prints, which turned into art, like doing mixed media art. So I was selling mixed media art plus the sewing stuff. And then I just started diving headfirst into the mixed media, stopped sewing quite a bit, except for personal stuff. And then was doing mixed media art, which then turned into me wanting, this is going to be a long story, you guys, which then turned into me wanting to do my own paintings. So I was painting these big-eyed, beautiful girls. Like I became kind of known for that for a little while. And then I started getting more realistic with my painting, which then turned to furniture painting for some reason, which we're not done yet, you guys. So then it went to, from furniture painting, I had a vintage booth and I started to want to make things to fill the booth, like the smalls besides the furniture, which made me stumble upon these, like, I figured out a technique to make these floral state signs that looked super realistic and watercolored vibed. I started selling those like crazy and started consigning, started wholesaling, started selling to department stores. Like it took a life of its own. And I was doing that for quite a while. And then I got burned out real bad. I just felt like I was a factory, so to speak. I was a one-woman factory. And so when that happened, I made the decision that I still love making and I love experimenting. So I was like, you know what, maybe I could be like more like a brand ambassador. And so I wanted to start a portfolio of like videos and working with different products and showing like, this is my personality, like this is how I connect with people. And so I started crafting after bedtime. It started in my basement. It still is Thursday nights after my kids went to bed, with a drink in hand and some sort of craft. And it started out with just me like building like the first videos. I think they're still on our site. I'm pretty sure they are. I'm pretty sure they're still on Facebook. They're interesting. They're interesting. But what happened was with the flowers, I actually saw a blog post. Somebody was like talking about doing flowers for their daughter's wedding and pointed out that you could dye them with paint. And I was like, wait a minute. This is like everything I love in life. There's wood products going on, there's paint, and there's flowers. Like you sold. I'm obsessed. So once I knew you could dye them, like it was over. And that pretty much became what everything was as far as our obsession. And then, yeah, same thing. I started selling them at craft shows again. I went back to the craft show market and it was amazing. Like I had never sold out on a show before. And I just today saw a memory pop up from 4 years ago.
Aww.
Yeah. 4 years ago when I only had like 5 to like 6 items left after a show. And then I had a show the next week and that week I sold out too. Like I was just like, so that is the very long and winding road of my crafty journey.
I think one thing I'm going to mention, and then I have a question for both of us to answer. Mm-hmm. So like in my break after I left the yarn company, before I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I was in a creative slump, like real bad. I had been creative for 10 years with the fiber arts. And then, I was working for a yarn company, which is creative. And something happened to that like force inside of me and it was completely shut off. until I saw you use the flowers. And then I was like, I might start crying. I was like this, and I don't cry. Stephanie knows this. I don't cry. But it was like this huge light bulb went off in my heart, and I was like, oh my God, like this is like the next thing I want to do, you know? It totally got me out of it. And I was in a slump for like 2 years of like, I didn't make shit. So it felt really good to have that fire back. And I appreciate the flowers for that, though, you know, like bringing me out of that. I think one thing that might be fun to share, Steph, that would, you know, just give a little more transparency. Like if you're, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, you guys, so I'm kind of just springing this on her, but it might be fun to share with people like how much we were making yearly in our individual businesses before this. Do you have any idea? Do you remember?
I know not until the signs was I making.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the signs. Your last year working with the signs, do you remember about how much you made?
Well, no, not right offhand, but I know that it was enough to be a significant amount to contribute to our household. Like, because at that point when I was doing the signs, so I have 5 kids, and by baby number 3, I had like kind of pulled back to being closer to part-time, just because daycare is really expensive for that amount of kids, and not all my kids were in school yet. And so I had been pulled back closer to part-time, and then I started even doing like consulting work, or like being kind of a contracted worker for a company that I had worked for a long time. Anyway, when I left that particular position, I was able to at least be making, I would say, between 20 to maybe, it might have been close to, it might have been up to 40,000, but it wasn't any more than that. Like, it was close to a part-time, kind of mid-wage, full-time job.
Yeah, so we were in the same position. I think I exited on making like around 30 the last year I did it. And I think, you know, maybe some of you, a lot of you watching this have your own little small businesses. And I don't know, I want people to know like you can make enough to contribute to your household and still have control over what you're doing. And I think why Stefanie and I kind of landed in this place is because, you know, we both knew we could run a business. We've done it for how long? And, you know, we both wanted to be that contributing member of our household. And I don't know, people just need to like know, women just need to know, like, you can start small and stay small for a long time and it's fine. Like, you don't have to take it to this like next explosive level. Like, it is doable to be a crafter and contribute to your household income. And it really honestly adds so much flexibility to the family life. It's kind of ridiculous. How beautiful that can be. Like, if you find the right thing in the niche, you know.
Yeah. And I think it's too, it just depends on what your goals are. I mean, we had some really big lofty goals when we first started. And I mean, we're hitting those.
First started Oh You're Lovely?
Yeah, first started Oh You're Lovely.
Yeah.
We've been able to meet the goals that we've wanted to hit for sure, and always are pushing ourselves further. But when I was first started, it was more, I just enjoyed it so much. And it was like, I have all this stuff and I can only give away so much to my friends and family when they're like, girl, I already have 5 purses. I don't need no more. So you got to do something with it. And and now I'm learning though too, because we make for a living, a little bit different than others, but we are still like, I'm always creating, but it is fun now to have other craft hobbies that are only a hobby. Like I've never had that because I've always felt like I've had to sell it, but it's kind of a cool change to have something that I can still be very creative with and be making all the time and making a living at, but also then pull in some other creative crafts where it's just for me and nobody else. So that's kind of cool too. Do you want to talk about the origin story of Oh You're Lovely? As far as your side of it versus my side of it, and how our facts line up.
So, you know, right. So, like I said, I saw Stefanie on a crafting video using the flowers, reached out. I started ordering the flowers. For me, what started happening, and it kind of coincided with the same thing happening with Stefanie, is at the time, there was really only 2 or 3 places to order these flowers from. And they had a lot of trouble keeping stuff in stock. And you'd have to wait like a really, really, really long time to get your order. Then most of the time it wouldn't be right. And because I worked for a craft-based business, a yarn company that was internet-based, I was like, I know this shit doesn't have to be like this. Like, and as like somebody who was like trying to get going with the flowers, it was frustrating. But then Stefanie and I were talking more and more, and she was using the flowers for the craft shows, and they weren't showing up in time. And I just, it lit this fire in me of like, it doesn't have to be this way. And finally, I was like, we can do this better. And I proposed to Stefanie, like, why don't we order a container of flowers? And I'm pretty sure she thought I was crazy. But here we are today.
Here we are.
And one thing just led to another. And, honestly, a big force behind us starting Oh You're Lovely is because we were the women making stuff with these flowers and selling it and depending on that income. And we knew there was a hole in the supply chain with these couple companies not being up to par with what we wanted as consumers. So our goal was to always be a trusted supplier, to not break, our promises on shipping, to keep stuff in stock as much as possible, like all the things, because there's thousands of women who have small businesses with these flowers, and they deserve to have a solid supply chain. And that's really why we started. Yeah. We wanted to be that for other women.
And I think, well,
here we
are. I would say the one thing when you first said we should order a container, originally I was just like, how am I going to go through that many flowers at craft shows? And then you're like, no.
no.
This is what I'm proposing. And it was super exciting. I mean, it's terrifying. It was like the biggest, it was an investment. We pulled from all different places to be able to get that initial shipment. And it was terrifying. It was a really big, like, take a deep breath, jump. But we did know that there was definitely a market there. There's definitely people that were relying on having supply when they, were expecting it. Because I think the hardest thing for me, the biggest one, because they were doing so well, I was obviously ordering what I thought was what I needed to prepare myself and with enough time. But I had never experienced selling out like back-to-back shows. And so when that happened, it really left me scrambling because I had a 2-day show. So I had a show the week prior and sold out. And then I had the next week a back-to-back 2-day show. And I had placed an order like the day of the show that was selling out because I knew that I was going to need more product because I was not anticipating selling out like that. Ordered more. And it didn't get to me in time. Like, I scrambled. I had to really scramble, and like, I could have sold more at that other show had I had all of the supplies that I needed. So it was definitely kind of an eye-opening experience. Plus, the other places you could get them from were like craft stores that had them on stems and things like that. That's actually where I first got the flowers, was from one of the home decor, or one of the craft stores. But there was only like 3 different style flowers, and you can only get like 6 in a pack, and yada, 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 yada. So, yeah, that's basically the origin story of Oh You're Lovely. And the fact that we made the decisions too of like how we wanted things run, as far as like, Maggie is the numbers queen. She has great relationships with our makers and the artisans that we work with for the flowers. And I am the loudmouth. With the bright hair.
Don't say that. Something I reflect on is like, Stefanie just said, like, we had to pull from all sorts of different places, is that the people that helped us didn't think we were crazy.
No.
And I'm so grateful they didn't think we were crazy, because even now when people ask me what I do for work, it sounds really weird. It does. And back then when it was just a concept, the people who did help us pool resources were like, okay. And it was just kind of like, for one time in my life, everything was like...
It was so serendipitous.
I will say it hasn't been like that the
No.
whole 3.5 years, but the beginning was really like things just kind of fell into place the way they needed to.
Yeah. I agree too. It was.
I will say kind of one funny thing in the beginning of the start of our business was, we've never done this before, didn't really know how much space we needed.
Oh.
So the first,
The closet.
and we wanted to be we wanted to be really thrifty with the resources we did have.
And we're still super thrifty, I will point out too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this was probably not the best way to start. So, I looked around for a while at like different options, and we talked for months about, okay, what are we going to do? And at first we're like, we'll just keep all the cases from the container in a storage unit. And I'll work from my house. Like, we talked about that a lot. Do you even remember that?
I do. Yeah, trying to find like a climate controlled warehouse storage space. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I was like, man, I don't know if there was some like doubts about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the area I live in, North Carolina, there's all these cotton mills that have been turned into different kinds of living and workspaces. So we rented a small space in a cotton mill. And before the container came, my lovely husband was like, I better make sure this is going to fit in there, like what was coming in the container. And he's really, really, really smart. So he took the dimensions of the cases and he knew how many we're getting. And he's like, Maggie, this isn't gonna work. So before we even got the container, we had to rent a second space in the cotton mill. And then within 3 months, we had to rent a third space in the cotton mill. And then before a year was over, we were in a 12,000 square foot warehouse. It really exploded. And maybe in another podcast, we can talk about the journey of finding this place, because that was a whole shit show. But I think it's funny how naive we were. Mm-hmm. In general, Stefanie, I don't do well with sizes.
No, that's what I was just going to say.
I don't think it's a commonly known thing. But we're horrible. When something says, oh, it's this many inches, it doesn't mean anything to Stefanie and I, honestly.
Even when I look at a ruler, I'm like, oh, okay, it's like that. And then when we get it, like, wait a minute. They're not computing. That did not go the way I thought it was. Both ways, too. Sometimes things are really small that we thought were going to be bigger, and sometimes things are way bigger than we anticipated them to be.
We had that happen recently with the spring crate, actually. But anyways, so it was a little bit of a bumpy start, space-wise, but still kind of funny.
It was a really cool. It was a cool space, though. I mean, it wasn't ideal for what we were doing, but a very cool space. Yeah,
right.
There was a lot of you walking back and forth in carts and all of this other stuff too.
So yeah, our spaces were not.
They weren't like next door.
There were 3 separate parts of the building. One being on the 3rd floor.
I never saw that.
So we were.
I don't know if I ever saw that particular space. I think you moved out by the time I came to visit again. Yeah.
So there was a lot of us hogging the elevator with our cart filled with cases of flowers to bring it down to the unit. We were bagging stuff in and shipping order. Anyways,
it was a lot.
One day, it was great. Anyways,
and now look at us. And now, even now,
now,
like space is even getting a little tight in the space that we're in. So.
Just this week, Steph, on the way to work, Ember's like, when do you guys think you're going to need to get a bigger warehouse? I was like, we're not talking about that.
La 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 her. La 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 la. No,
I did.
Well, I think,
all right.
So I don't know that we have any other things that we're going to talk about in this particular podcast. I am going to start, I haven't set it up yet, but we're going to have an email address to send so that you guys can ask us questions. We'll announce that next episode. Okay. I'll get it set up before next episode. So you guys can ask us questions and all that fun stuff. I don't know, like we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants on this one as far as what you guys want to hear and what we should focus on. It's just nice for Maggie and I, like we work together very closely day by day, but it's mostly just via chat. We don't really get to talk to each other face to face, or most of the time, if we're calling, I'm like, I promise it's only going to be 5 minutes. I just have a quick question kind of thing, because we're both just go all the time. So this is nice. And we might just sit and chat about random things. But I don't know, what else? Is there anything else that you, like your hopes for this, Maggie?
Well, I want this to be the one little area we can be like more transparent, because on social media, you just can't let it all fly.
Right.
It's just not appropriate. I feel like on a podcast, if people are having to search you out, they're wanting to hear what you have to say. So, having said that, like, send us questions. You can pretty much ask us anything, but don't ask us how to start selling wood flowers or who our manufacturers are or what technology we use for Don't ask us how to do what we're doing, but we'll pretty much answer anything.
Yeah.
And I say that, and you guys might be like, why is she saying that? Because we get fucking emails like that frequently.
Oh, beep, beep.
Sorry.
Now we're going to have to put an E by our podcast. We both have
but it's
horrible
true.
mouths, both of us.
It's true, though.
It is true, yeah.
So do not ask us how to set up a business like what we're doing, but you can pretty much ask us.
You can ask us all kinds of questions about running a handmade business. We've got experience across the board, as you heard with my insanely long description of my history, but we do have a lot of experience in that. We have a lot of opinions as well. And there's certain things we may divulge, but other things, like, we're going to keep those. Those are ours. Those are ours. We can share what we want. So,
you can ask us parenting stuff. Stuff about being working wives. You can ask us whatever.
I don't know if they want my. Well, I have feral children, 5 crazy children. We both were also in different parts of our history. I know Maggie's actually ending her homeschool journey for a little while there, but we both homeschool. But I've also had my kids go to public school, so we've done a little bit of everything. So yeah. I would think maybe more like life balance tips, but we don't even have. We're working on those. It's 3.5 years in.
Very good.
We're 3.5 years in, and we're finally like, we're not working on the weekends. Like, we're setting some boundaries. We're a work in progress too. But so I'm really excited for where this comes. Our plan is to upload podcasts at least twice a month, and if you guys are loving them and we're loving them and all that jazz, we'll start doing more. And we'll see where this ride takes us. So. Awesome.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thank you so much for listening to the first one. We'll see you guys. Not see you. Well, if you're watching, because we're going to have the video going too. So that'll be up on YouTube. And then podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, hopefully will be there too. So, all right, you guys, we'll see you for another episode. I don't even know what we're calling this. Just Oh, You're Lovely. I don't know. We'll figure out a title for the whole thing. Bye. But we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.